Cinderella Man, 2005 is the inspiring sports drama starring Russell Crowe as the real-life James J. Braddock, a struggling boxer who defied the odds during the Great Depression. Directed by Ron Howard, the film captures Braddock's journey of resilience and hope. Joining us today is Hollywood hairstylist and legend Emmanuel Millar, who's back to share his first-hand experience working with Russell. Cinderella Man, super excited. Let's do it. Mr. Emanuel, sir, welcome back. As always, it's an honor. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for sharing. I've read your memoir twice now. Epic stories. But to hear these stories from you directly, it's just been so amazing, so inspiring. I really appreciate it. Cinderella Man, 2005. Nowadays we have, all this CGI and we have AI and, all this other stuff. I mean, they don't make movies like this anymore. And, obviously it's a period piece. My first question is, where did you guys shoot this?
Thank you, Chris. And again, thank you for having me back. I'm enjoying these interviews very much. We shot it in Toronto they converted for the boxing, most of the boxing sequences are the larger ones. They converted the old Maple Leaf hockey stadium, and it was kind of eerie. I actually felt like there were possibly ghosts in the building of things that had been there so long. And but it was a perfect place for the background, the extras. Sometimes we had up to 500, maybe even more, all dressed in period clothes, and the men wore hats because it was 1932. It was magical, actually, to recreate that many people in that era, that period.
Amazing. And by this time, Russell was already a star. We had Gladiator, A Beautiful Mind. What was he like in person? What was your first impression?
Honestly, my first impression of him was he was full of himself and a bit of an ass.
Really?
And Russell Crowe, for whatever reason, was late to set almost every day, from anywhere from 20 minutes to 2 to 3 to sometimes 4 hours he would be late. I mean, there were times in doing Russell's hair that you could see the panic in the producers' faces and the AD's faces, and we can't find Russell. We're called his room. We're looking for him, and we're getting him here. Russell hasn't left his hotel room yet. It was always something when he was late. Please know, with all sincerity, I'm just telling the stories the way that I lived them and relaying them in my book. I think Russell Crowe still is a brilliant actor, but my first impression, what an ass.
Always unfortunate to hear these days with everything out in the open on social media. We typically get a glimpse of the person behind the role, right? But back then, all we really saw were the characters they portrayed. So, considering this is such an inspirational story, we naturally hope the real person reflects, somewhat of that same spirit. Well, what was he like with everyone else? Like his co-star, Renee Zellweger.
I loved Renee. Renee was so lovely. I mean, I just found her. I found it sweet how she would say my name and just say hi, Manny, or in the morning. But she was focused as an actress. So one day, Russell apparently saw Renee riding around Toronto on a bicycle. So he bought her a brand new bicycle and sent it to her trailer. And the message I heard was Renee said, "Don't buy me a bike, don't buy me anything, just be on time," because she had it. And she was probably the only one who had the courage to say to him, just be on time. In other words, I took it as, when I heard that message, just be professional.
Well, good for Renee. She seems like such a sweetheart. She's a really good actress. I loved her performance. And, it's so crazy, so unfortunate, hearing all these stories. And the one story, Emmanuel, the big one that stuck out, when I first read this, there's obviously the moment when Russell Crowe got physical on set with you. He actually hit you, right? Can you tell us about that? Set it up for us. How did that day start? What happened?
Russell was late. He was, and so he usually would get to the set as if nothing happened, that he didn't cause anything. But I think on this day, he was maybe 2-3 hours late. Ron Howard came into the trailer, which he rarely did. Russell had his own trailer. We did his makeup and hair in his own trailer. No other actors were allowed in there. It was, in fact, we created this little thing called Russell World, And it was Russell Crowe's personal trailer, his gym trailer, his assistant's trailer, and his makeup and hair trailer. It was almost like it was a building site. And there are 17 people on payroll just for Russell. So Ron Howard came in that morning and told him, "Hey, Russell, we're going to shoot French hours today. French hours it's only 10 hours because it was going to be a Canadian holiday that weekend. So they were trying to give the Canadians Saturday, Sunday, and Monday off, and we would resume back Tuesday, which was much needed at that point after dealing mostly with Russell. And as soon as he left the trailer, Russell said to me, go get my PA, Bucky. So I went to get Bucky. Bucky came in. He said, "Yeah, Russell." And Russell said, "I'm going to train for 2 hours today." And I thought to myself, you're not fighting today. This is a scene. Ron Howard just very kindly told you we're going to try to wrap by 9 o'clock, and people were excited about shooting French hours and get a long 3-day weekend. By 1:30 in the morning, we were still filming, and there was a moment where he and Paul Giamatti were trying to work a scene out. It was just Russell Crowe and Paul Giamatti, and I saw the first AD, Bill. He kind of nodded to us. Could you guys do your thing so we can just shoot, so we can get out of here? So I was the first in line, and then David, his makeup man, and Sean were behind me, and then Johnny, his costumer, and we were all just going to touch him up. And usually actors would let me, while they were rehearsing or talking to the director, unless they said, "Not now, Emmanuel, let me just focus on this." And then when I reached in, Russell said, "Not now, Manny," and he swung at me, and that's when he hit me. I got so angry that night that I left the set, and I don't usually do that when an actor's working. And all of a sudden, my cell phone rang, and it was Ron Howard. And the first thing he said, "Are you okay?" And I said, "Ron," and I started to cry. I was so angry. Tears came to my eyes. And I said, "If that motherfucker ever touches me again, I will." And he said, I know. He said, "I know." He said, if you wanted to leave, I would respect it. He said, "You and I will work together again many times." He said, but maybe Ron felt so bad. And but I said, "Ron, do you want me here in this movie?" He said, you know how I feel about that." I said, "Then I will stay." We had our 3-day weekend off, and come Tuesday morning, he was actually, interesting enough, after he hit me, he was on time to set that morning, maybe just a few minutes late. And it was going to be a scene where Russell Crowe and his wife, Renee Zellweger, so they were in a restaurant scene, and there was a confrontation. Well, at one point, right before the scene, Russell's son, Charlie, was visiting the set. I saw Russell lift Charlie up in the air, and Charlie grabbed his hair, and 2 pieces on either side of his forehead stood up, and they looked like little antennae. And I had just fixed his hair, and I heard rolling, and so I ran in there, and I heard "cut," and that was not Ron Howard's voice. It was Russell yelling "cut." And when I turned around, Russell was coming for me, and he had his right fist in the air, ready, fisted up, his right arm in the air, fisted up. And as I turned around, we now were maybe 2 feet in front of each other, and I never raised my voice. And he came at me, and I said, "Do not hit me." I said, "Do not hit me." And he said, "Hit you?" And I said, "If you touch me again, I will punch you in the face, and then I'm out of here. Do you understand?" I said, "You hit me last Friday in the locker room. Your watch bruised my arm." I said, "You touch me again, and I will punch you in the face." And he lowered his fist, and he said, "Why would you do that? Why would you do that right before a take?" I said, "Your son I saw Charlie mess up your hair. I was doing my job." I said, "It would have been an unusable take, so I made a choice." And he said, "Well, how's my hair now?" And I said, "It's fine." And he said, "You and I aren't finished with this." And he yelled, "Let's do it." And he walked away as if he were now in control. And I said, "Fine."
Oh, and real quick, Emmanuel, sorry to interrupt, but do you think that this is Russell Crowe all the time? Is this him, the person? Is this the actor? I mean, is this a Hollywood thing? Because we hear stories like this where actors, producers, they go off on set, they have these huge, negative, reactions or whatever. And what blows my mind is that, I mean, these are huge projects, productions, lots of people, lots of money. And I saw Russell Crowe on the Joe Rogan podcast a while back, and he was talking about his training and his diet. I mean, it's not an excuse, but I just can't imagine. I mean, I just feel like that would just be overloaded as far as the intensity and and the stress.
Chris, that's you're reading my mind, because what happened later that day, after we had an intense day and we got back to the trailer, we saw Russell Crowe. I don't know how he did it, but he beat us there, and he was sitting in the trailer door on the steps, so we couldn't go inside and put our things down. And I thought, okay, I'll do it. Even though he's the one who hit me, I said, hey, Russell, I'm sorry. And he looked up. I said, I'm sorry if I did something to disrupt your work today. I said, I apologize. I was just doing my job. And he said, you know why I don't talk to you? That's his response. He said, you know why I don't talk to you? And I said, to me, sarcastically, I said, no, Russell, why don't you talk to me? He said, because you're always there, you do a good job, and you're one less thing I have to think about. And I thought, so that's why there's no good morning, no hello, no how are you. I think it's Russell, but I think that him being a boxer and playing Jim Braddock, and Jim Braddock was there almost every day and he was trying to please everybody. I think he thought he was Hollywood. I think he thought he was invincible. And I actually did forgive him when my two youngest children, Stephen and Catherine, came visiting set. He talked to them for about 20 minutes. And later on, when they said to me, Dad, Russell said he's going to give us all the gifts he's giving the crew. He gave us hats and t-shirts. And I thought, I can forgive you, because you can be a shit to me. And you were, Russell. You were a shit to me most of the time, but you were nice to my kids, and that is forgivable.
Yes, this story gives me chills. I know it, I read it, but to hear it from you directly, I'm so sorry that this happened to you. But as always, you handled things like a champ. It was your first fight scene.
Possibly the last story that I'll tell is Russell. I heard that Russell would have these dinners on Thursday night. He would, I think it was the Grill, or one of the famous steakhouse restaurants there in Toronto. And he would have about maybe 11 to 15 crew members that he would invite to these dinners. But what I found even most interesting is his assistant came up to me one day and he said, Manny, you've been to one of the dinners, haven't you? I said, no, I never been invited. And the look on his face, it was towards the end of the movie. He said, you've never been invited? I said, no, I've never been invited. There were a few of us, and I was one of the few, who never got invited to the dinners. So even though I was doing Russell's hair, but I would hear third and fourth costumers and prop assistants were at the dinners, and people that I didn't even know their name, the crew member's name, said, oh, we went to the Russell Crowe dinner, but there I was doing his hair, and I was never invited to dinner. I should say right now, Russell, if you're listening to this, you owe me dinner.
Mr. Emanuel, thank you so much. Thank you again for being here, for sharing, for all that you do. I really appreciate it. Again, epic work. I see these movies, I see these characters in a whole new light. So thank you so much for everything. Guys, as always, thank you so much for watching. Thank you for believing. Don't forget to pick up your copy of the Kindest Cut, Intuitive Life Lessons Learned by a Hollywood Hairstylist, Volume 1, Volume 2, epic Hollywood stories. Happy New Year to all of you. This is our last video of 2024, again, which means lots and lots of new videos for 2025. I'm super excited. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for believing, and we'll see you soon. Cheers.